evening home festival of fun on Instagram. And hi, Harlow and Brogan, how are you? Hope you're good. Hi, Danny. Hi, Home Festival Fun on Facebook. How are you doing? Give me a wave and let me know that you can hear me loud and clear. How have you all been today? You all been good? What day is it today? It's Sunday. Okay, so it's Sunday. I've been shopping today, chilling out in the sunshine a little bit. All been good. There we go. Facebook. Hi, Facebook. How you doing? Give us a little shout and a wave and let me know that you can hear me. There we go. Oh, she's still... These aren't very good for seeing the glowy eyes. There we go. How you doing? Hi. Oh, lovely. You can hear me. Good. And Facebook, give us a little thumbs up. Hi, Tina. How you doing? Amazing. My goodness. Okay, so we're in bedtime stories for Home Festival Fun. And we are reading The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, for those of you who haven't seen us. And where have we come to? Hi, Trudy. We've come to the part... thank you, love the glasses. They just glow though in the screen, don't they? I know, I'm getting old. I can't see so well anymore. So we've come to the part in the story where we've met Aslan. The White Witch tried to claim Edmund as her own because of the deep dark magic. And then Aslan went away to have a chat with the witch. And we're going to find out what happens next. So I'm going to give it one more second for people to arrive. Hi, guys. There we go. Can you see? There we go. Lovely. Hi, Avril. Hi, Stephen. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Gareth. There we go. Love it. Send me your hearts and bubbles. Good. Right then, everybody, are we ready for the next instalment of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe? As soon as the witch had gone, Aslan said... "We must move from this place at once. It will be wanted for other purposes. We shall encamp tonight at the fords of Baruna." Of course, everyone was dying to ask him how he had arranged matters with the witch, but his face was stern and everyone's ears were still ringing from the sound of his roar, so no one dared. After a meal, which was taken in the open air on the hilltop, for the sun had got strong by now and dried the grass, they were busy for a while, taking the pavilion down and packing things up. Before 2 o'clock, they were on the march and set off in a northeasterly direction, walking at an easy pace, for they had not far to go. During the first part of the journey, Aslan explained to Peter his plan of the campaign. As soon as she has finished her business in these parts, the witch and her crew will almost certainly fall back to her house and prepare for a siege. You may or may not be able to cut her off and prevent her from reaching it. He then went on to outline 2 plans of battle, one for fighting the witch and her people in the wood, and another for assaulting her at the castle. And all the time he was advising Peter how to conduct the operations, saying things like, "You must put your centaurs in such and such a place," or "You must post scouts to see that she doesn't do so and so," till Peter at last said, "But you will be there yourself, Aslan." "I can give you no promise of that," answered the lion, and he continued giving Peter his instructions. For the last part of the journey, it was Susan and Lucy who saw most of him. He did not talk very much and seemed to them to be sad. It was still the afternoon when they came to a place where the river valley had widened out and the river was broad and shallow. This was the fords of Baruna, and Aslan gave orders to halt on this side of this water. But Peter said, wouldn't it be better to camp on the far side for fear she would try attacking at night or anything? Aslan, who seemed to have been thinking about something else, roused himself by shaking his magnificent mane and said, "What was that?" Peter said it all over again. "No," said Aslan in a dull voice, as if it didn't matter. "No, she will not make an attack tonight." And then he sighed deeply. But presently he added, "All the same time, it was well thought of. That is how a soldier ought to think. But it really doesn't matter." So they proceeded to pitch their camp. Aslan's mood affected everyone that evening. Peter was feeling uncomfortable too at the idea of fighting the battle on his own. The news that Aslan might not be there had come to a great shock to him. Supper that evening was a quiet meal. Everyone felt how different it had been the previous night or that morning. It was as if the good times, having just begun, were already drawing to their end. This feeling affected Susan so much that she couldn't get to sleep when she went to bed, and after she had lain counting sheep and turning over and over, she heard Lucy give a long sigh and turn over just beside her in the darkness. "Can't you sleep either?" said Susan. "No," said Lucy. "I thought you were asleep. I say, Susan." "What?" "I have a most horrible feeling, as if something were hanging over us." "Have you?" "Because, as a matter of fact, so have I." "Something about Aslan," said Lucy. "Either something dreadful is going to happen to him or something dreadful that he's going to do." "There's been something wrong with him all afternoon," said Susan. "Lucy, what was that he said about not being with us at the battle? You don't think he could be stealing away and leaving us tonight, do you?" "Where is he now?" said Lucy. "Is he here in the pavilion?" "I don't think so." "Susan, let's go outside and have a look around. We might see him." "All right, let's," said Susan. "We just might as well be doing that as lying awake here." Very quietly, the two girls groped their way among the other sleepers and creeped out of the tent. The moonlight was bright and everything was quite still except the noise of the river chattering over the stones. Then Susan suddenly caught Lucy's arm and said, "Look!" On the far side of the camping ground, just where the trees began, they saw the lion slowly walking away from them into the wood. Without word, they both followed him. He led them up a steep slope out of the river valley and then slightly to the right, apparently by the very same route which they had used that afternoon in coming from the hill of the stone table. On and on he led them into the dark shadows and out into the pale moonlight, getting their feet wet with the heavy dew. He looked somehow different from the Aslan they knew. His tail and his head hung low, and he walked slowly, as if he was very, very tired. Then, when they were crossing a wide open place, there were no shadows for them to hide in, and he stopped and looked around. It was no good trying to run away, so they came towards him. When they were closer, he said, "Oh, children, children, why are you following me?" "We couldn't sleep," said Lucy, and then felt sure that she need say no more, and that Aslan knew all that they had been thinking. "Please, may we come with you, wherever you're going?" said Susan. "Well," said Aslan, and seemed to be thinking. Then he said, "I should be glad of company tonight. Yes, yes, you may come. But you must promise to stop when I tell you, and after that, leave me to go alone." "Oh, thank you, and we will," said the girls. Forward they went on, and one of the girls walked each side of the lion, but how slowly he walked, and his great royal head drooped so that his nose nearly touched the grass. Presently he stumbled and gave a low moan. "Aslan, dear Aslan," said Lucy, "what's wrong? Can you tell us?" "Are you ill, dear Aslan?" asked Susan. "No," said Aslan, "I am sad and lonely. Lay your hands on my mane so that I can feel that you are there, and let us walk like that." And so the girls did what they never would have dared to do without his permission, but what they had longed to do for ever since they first saw him, and buried their cold hands in the beautiful sea of fur and stroked it, and so doing walked with him. And presently they saw that they were going with him up the slope on the hill which the stone table stood. They went up the side where the trees came furthest up, and when they got to the last tree, it was the one that had bushes about it, Aslan stopped and said, "Oh, children, children, here you must stop, and whatever happens, do not let yourself be seen. Farewell." And both the girls cried bitterly, though they hardly knew why, and clung to the lion and kissed his mane and his nose and his paws and his great sad eyes. And then he turned from them and walked out onto the top of the hill. And Lucy and Susan, crouching in the bushes, looked after him. And this is what they saw. A great crowd of people all around the stone table, and though the moon was shining, many of them carried torches, which burned with evil-looking red flames and black smoke. But such people! Ogres with monstrous teeth, and wolves and bull-headed men, and spirits of evil trees and poisonous plants, and other creatures whom I won't describe, because if I did, the grown-ups probably wouldn't let you read this book. But cruels, and hags, and incubuses, wraiths, horrors, efreets, sprites, orkneys, woozes, and ettins. In fact, here were all those who were on the witch's side, and whom the wolf had summoned at her command. And right in the middle, standing by the table, was the witch herself. A howl and a gibber of dismay went up from the creatures when they first saw the great lion pacing towards them, and for a moment even the witch seemed to be struck with fear. Then she recovered herself and gave a wild, fierce laugh. "The fool!" she cried. "The fool has come! Bind him fast!" Lucy and Susan held their breaths, waiting for Aslan's roar and his spring upon his enemies. But it never came. 4 hags, grinning and leering, yet also at first hanging back and half afraid of what they had to do, had approached him. "Bind him, I say," repeated the White Witch. The hags made a dart at him and shrieked with triumph when they found that he made no resistance at all. Then others, evil dwarfs and apes, rushed in to help them, and between them they rolled the huge lion over on his back and tied all 4 paws together, shouting and cheering as if they'd done something brave. Though, had the lion chosen, one of those paws could have been the death of them all. But he made no noise, even when the enemies, straining, tugging, pulling the cords so tight that they cut into his flesh. Then they began to drag him towards the stone table. "Stop!" said the witch. "Let him first be shaved." Another roar of mean laughter went up from her followers as an ogre with a pair of shears came and squatted by Aslan's head. Snip, snip, snip went the shears, and masses of curling gold began to fall to the ground. Then the ogre stood back, and the children watching from their hiding place could see the face of Aslan, looking all small and different without his mane. The enemies also saw the difference. "Why, he's only a great cat after all," cried one. "Is that what we were afraid of?" said another. And they surged around Aslan, jeering at him, saying things like, "Puss, puss, poor puss, and how many mices have you caught today, cat? And would you like a saucer of milk, puss?" "And how can they?" said Lucy, tears streaming down her cheeks. "The brutes! The brutes!" For now that the first shock was over, the shorn face of Aslan to her looked braver and more beautiful and more patient than ever. "Muzzle him," said the witch. And even now, as they worked about his face putting on the muzzle, one bite from his jaws could have cost 2 or 3 of them their hands. But he never moved. And this seemed to enrage all that rabble. Everyone was at him now. Those who had been afraid to come near him, even after he was bound, began to find their courage, and for a few minutes the 2 girls could not even see him. So thickly was he surrounded by the whole crowd of creatures, kicking him, hitting him, spitting on him, jeering at him. At last the rabble had had enough of this. They began to drag the bound and muzzled lion to the stone table, some pulling, some pushing. He was so huge that even when he got him there, it took all of their efforts to hoist him onto the surface of it. And then there were more tying and tightening of cords. "The cowards, the cowards," sobbed Susan. "Are they still afraid of him even now?" And once Aslan had been tied, and tied so that he was really a mass of cords, on that flat stone, a hush fell on the crowd. 4 hags, holding 4 torches, stood at the corners of the table. The witch bared her arms, as she had bared them the previous night when it had been Edmund instead of Aslan, and then she began to whet her knife. It looked at the children when the gleam of torchlight fell on it, as if the knife were made from stone, not of steel, and it was of a strange and evil shape. At last she drew near. She stood by Aslan's head. Her face was working and twitching with a passion, but his looked up at the sky, still quiet, neither angry nor afraid, but a little sad. Then, just before she gave the blow, she stooped down and said in a quivering voice, "And now who has won, fool? Did you think that by all this you would save the human traitor? Now I will kill you instead of him, as our pact was, and so the deep magic will be appeased. But when you are dead, what will prevent me from killing him as well? And who will take him out of my hand then? Understand, you have given me Narnia forever. You have lost your own life, and you have not saved his. In that knowledge, despair and die." The children did not see the actual moment of killing. They couldn't bear to look and had covered their eyes. While the 2 girls still crouched in the bushes with their hands over their faces, they heard the voice of the witch calling out, "Now follow me all, and we will set about what remains of this war. It will not take us long to crush the human vermin and the traitors now that the great fool, the great cat, lies dead." At this moment, the children for a few seconds were in grave danger, for with wild cries, a noise of skirling pipes and shrill horns blowing, the whole of that vile rabble came sweeping off the hilltop and down the slope past their hiding place. They felt spectres go by them like a cold wind, and they felt the ground shake beneath them under the galloping of the minotaurs. And overhead there were a flurry of foul wings and blackness and vultures and giant bats. At any other time they would have trembled with fear, but now the sadness and shame and horror of Aslan's death so filled their minds that they hardly thought of it. As soon as the wood was silent again, Susan and Lucy crept out onto the open top hill. The moon was getting low and thin clouds were passing across her, but still they could see the shape of the lion lying dead in his bonds. And down they knelt in the wet grass and kissed his cold face and stroked his fur, what was left of it, and cried till they could cry no more. And then they looked at each other and held each other's hands for mere loneliness and cried again, and then were silent. At last Lucy said, "I can't bear to look at that horrible muzzle. I wonder, could we take it off?" So they tried. And after a lot of working at it, for their fingers were cold and it was the darkest part of the night, they succeeded. And when they saw his face without it, they burst out crying again and kissed it and fondled it and wiped away the blood and the foam as best they could. And it was all more lonely and hopeless and horrid, I know how to describe. "I wonder, could we untie him as well?" said Susan presently. But the enemies, out of pure spitefulness, had drawn the cord so tight that the girls could make nothing of the knots. I hope no one who reads this book has been quite as miserable and as Lucy and Susan were that night, but if you have been all up all night crying until you have no more tears left in you, you will know that there comes, in the end, a sort of quietness. You feel as if nothing is ever going to happen again. At any rate, that was how it felt for these 2. Hours and hours seemed to go by in this dead calm, and they noticed that they were getting colder and colder. But at last Lucy noticed 2 other things. One was that the sky on the east of the hill was a little less dark than it had been an hour ago. The other was some tiny movement going on in the grass at her feet. At first she took no interest in this. Why did it matter? Nothing mattered now. But at last she saw whatever it was had begun to move up the stones of the stone table, and now whatever they were were moving about on Aslan's body. She peered closer. They were little grey things. "Oh," said Susan from the other side of the table. "How beastly! There are horrid little mice crawling over. Go away, you little beasts!" And she raised her hand to frighten them away. "Wait," said Lucy, who had been looking at them more closely still. "Can you see what they're trying to do?" Both girls bent down and stared. "I do believe," said Susan. "But how queer. They're nibbling away at the cords." "That's what I thought," said Lucy. "I think they're friendly mice. Poor little things. They don't realise he's dead. They think it'll do some good untying him." It was quite definitely lighter by now. Each of the girls noticed for the first time the white of the face of the other. They could see the mice nibbling away, dozens and dozens, even hundreds of field mice. And at last, one by one, the ropes were all gnawed through. The sky in the east was whitish by now, and the stars were fainter, all except one very big one low down on the eastern horizon. They felt colder than they'd ever been all night, and the mice crept away again. The girls cleared away the remains of the gnawed ropes, and Aslan looked more like himself without them. Every moment his dead face looking nobler as the light grew and they could see it better. In the wood behind them, a bird gave a chuckling sound. It had been so still for hours and hours that it startled them. Then another bird answered it. Soon there were birds singing all over the place. It was quite definitely early morning now, not late night. "I'm so cold," said Lucy. "So am I," said Susan. "Let's walk about a bit." They walked to the eastern edge of the hill and looked down. The one big star had almost disappeared, and the country all over looked dark grey. But beyond, at the very end of the world, the sea showed pale. The sky began to turn red. They walked to and fro so many times they could not count between the dead Aslan and the eastern ridge, trying to keep warm. And oh, how tired their legs felt. Then at last, as they stood for a moment, looking out towards the sea in Cair Paravel, which they would now just make out, the red turned to gold along the line where the sea and the sky met, and very slowly up came the edge of the sun. At that moment, they heard from behind them a loud noise, a great cracking, deafening noise, as if a giant had broken a giant's plate. "What's that?" said Lucy, clutching Susan's arm. I feel afraid to turn around," said Susan. "Something awful is happening." "They're doing something worse to him," said Lucy. "Come on." And she turned, pulling Susan round with her. The rising of the sun had made everything look so different. All colours and shadows were changed, that for a moment they didn't see the important thing. And then they did. The stone table was broken in 2 pieces by a great crack that ran down it from end to end. And there was no Aslan. I'm going to finish there tonight. He'd gone. Oh my goodness. It's a good one, that one tonight, wasn't it? How is everybody? You okay? Bit dramatic. I was getting a bit emotional there. So that, we're about, where are we now? I think we're 15 and a half. There's only 17 chapters. So I don't know whether next session or the one after that will be the last. So don't forget to tune in. And the next session will be on Tuesday. And it's not going to be at 7 o'clock next week. I'm really sorry, we've had to change the times because the dancing times have had to move up. So I think it's going to be 8 o'clock Tuesday, but I'll let you know on social media anyway. But oh my goodness, a really good turnout tonight from both sides. So lovely to see you all, or hear from you all, or see all your messages anyway. And I shall see you next time. I will be going on to my page, Faye Tozer Smith, on Instagram at 7:30 if you want to come and say hi. Otherwise, I shall see you on Tuesday. Loads of love. Enjoy. See you then. Say goodbye to Facebook. And say goodbye to Insta. Until later. See you in a bit.